So in this video, we're going to factor trinomials where the leading coefficient is not equal to 1. We have trinomials that are in standard form, quadratic trinomials. And so they're going to look like this, of course, ax squared plus bx plus c. You've seen this before. But this time, our leading coefficient is not 1. So we have a different video where we discuss how to factor these trinomials when a was equal to 1. But in this video, a will not be 1. So we're going to talk about a couple of different techniques. And your instructor may show you one or several of these methods, but I'm sure that they'll probably just let you choose which method you feel more comfortable with. So I'm going to start with the bottoms up method, which is what's shown here in this box, because in my experience, my students have really liked this method. This is one of the favorites for my students. I'm going to show it to you with our first example and show you this method called the bottoms up method. Okay, but the first step will always be, we've been training you to look for a GCF of all three terms. And in this case, of course, it is 1. You still want to go ahead and do that first. All right, for the bottoms up method, we are going to first need to remind ourselves of what A, B, and C are in our quadratic trinomial. So A is the coefficient of the x squared term, so A is 2. B is the coefficient of the x term, so B is 7. And then C is our constant. Okay, so A, B, and C, there they are listed. And the first step is going to be to compute A, C. So that means multiply the 2 times the 6 is your first step in this bottoms up method. So for this problem, A times C, 2 times 6 is 12. Then our middle term is going to still be our sum. Our B is 7. So we are going to look for two numbers that multiply. So our AC is our product. So they have to multiply to 12 and they have to add up to 7. And of course, you know that that's 3 and 4. So there are our two numbers. Okay, but we're not done now, because in the AC method, the next step is to divide by A. So you're going to make fractions out of the two numbers. A was what? 2, right? So I'm going to make fractions. So look at what we're going to do. 3 over 2 and 2 over 2. Okay, so you found your two numbers that multiplied to 12 and added up to 7, which were 3 and 4. And now you're going to take your A, which was 2 in this case, right? A is 2, and you're going to create fractions out of your two numbers, putting the A in the denominator. And now this next step is really important because you're going to reduce, if possible. So the 3 halves, that does not reduce, so is unchanged. But the 4 over 2 reduces to a 2. So now these guys, you're going to bring these over here and you're going to create your set of parentheses. And the 2's easy. See the 2 there? You're going to write a parenthesis that says x plus 2. But the 3 halves, so you have this 3 halves here, right? I'm going to put it here for a minute, x plus 3 halves. But this is why the method is called bottoms up. This 2 is going to come up and become the coefficient of your x. And then it goes away from here. So 2x plus 3 times x plus 2. All right, I'm going to FOIL this just for check purposes so you can see that this works. We get 2x squared, and then the outers give us 4x, and the inside terms give us 3x, and the last give us 6. And there's our 7x. So you see that it really does check. Okay, so that's called the bottoms up. We're going to do a couple more with bottoms up, and then I'm going to show you a method called the AC method. All right, so here's our trinomial, and we're going to factor it completely, and we look for a GCF. The GCF is 1. And we're going to try bottoms up again. Bottoms up. Okay, so A is 4, B is -9, and C is 2, right? So the product is A times C. So that's your first step. Multiply together the 4 and the 2. So that gives us 8, a positive 8. And then our sum is B, which is -9. So look for two numbers that multiply to a positive 8. They have to add up to a -9. So those numbers would be -1 and -8, wouldn't they? Okay, so now here's the next step. This is the weird step. Divide by A. Divide these by A. So A is 4, isn't it? So make a fraction. See, the colors kind of help, don't they? So make a fraction like that with your A, all right, and then reduce. Reduce if possible. All right, so our first fraction does not reduce, does it? So negative 1/4, but our second fraction does reduce to a negative 2. Okay, so now you come over here and you make your parentheses, your set of parentheses. The number that's already reduced, the negative 2, just write x minus 2. But the negative 1/4, this 4 is going to go bottoms up. Okay, that has to go bottoms up, comes up with the x, and then you keep the minus 1. All right, so this is the bottoms up. Just a reminder for you. And again, the check is easy. 4x squared minus 8x minus 1x plus 2, and that does check. Okay, so easy to FOIL and check. So here's our answer. So what do you think of that bottoms up method? Okay, all right, let's try the AC method. Okay, for this next problem, we're going to try the AC method. And this one's going to use the grouping method that we talked about in a previous video. Okay, so here's how it goes. It actually starts out the same as the bottoms up in that you need to figure out what A times C is. So A times C is 10 times negative 5, right, for our trinomial. So it's a negative 50. Oh, by the way, did we check for GCF? Yes, we did. GCF is still 1. Okay, but that would still be our first step. All right, so A times C is negative 50, and we're still going to look at that middle term for our sum. So they really do start out the same, don't they? Okay, so now let's find two numbers that multiply to a negative 50, and they have to add up to a negative 23. And that would be negative 25 and a positive 2, wouldn't it? So now here, so far these look the same as the bottoms up, but now here's where they go different. You're going to go back now to your work, to your paper, and you're going to write your first term, your 10x squared, but you're going to replace the middle term. So we're going to replace the negative 23x. I'm going to replace that with your two numbers that you just wrote, but with an x. So like this, negative 25x minus 2x. Oops, positive 2x. Okay, so see what I did? I replaced the negative 23 with the two coefficients we just found, the two numbers with x. And then, of course, write back your negative 5. So now instead of having 3 terms, a trinomial, we have a polynomial with 4 terms. And so as you recall, that's when we use the grouping method, isn't it? So we're going to group 2 and 2. First 2, last 2. Leave a plus in between. This is our grouping method. Take out GCF of both of these, and so this first parenthesis, it would be a 5x, wouldn't it? That's going to leave me with 2x minus 5. Second parenthesis has no GCF, so it's like there's an invisible 1 here. I'm going to write it in so we can visualize it. Okay? Beautiful. Because remember with the grouping method, we know we're doing it right if these two parentheses match. So now go ahead and factor out those two parentheses. That's our GCF, 2x minus 5. That gets brought out, and then what's left inside is our 5x plus 1. Okay, so did you follow that? Now the advantage of this method over the bottoms up is you're not having to deal with a fraction anywhere here, right? But they're pretty comparable. I think you can pretty much choose which one you like best. Let's do another one with this grouping method. AC. It's called the AC method. That's where you'll find it. AC method. And let's do another one of those, okay? Okay, here we go. We have 6x squared plus 7x minus 3. We're going to try this one with the AC method, give you another practice at that method. And our GCF, all three terms, is 1. Okay, so we checked. And then the AC method, the first step is to find A times C, which would be negative 18 in this case. A times C, 6 times negative 3. Our sum is the middle term B coefficient, or 7. So now we need two numbers that multiply to a negative 18, and they have to add up to a positive 7. And so that would be a positive 9 with a negative 2. Okay, so now if you recall, those two numbers are going to replace the 7x. So rewrite what you've got so far. You have 6x squared, and then replace the 7x with a plus 9x minus 2x. And then add in the constant that you had. So your trinomial becomes a polynomial with 4 terms. You notice that? Okay, because now we will use the grouping method. With these 4 terms, we're going to group. Now remember, you can rearrange these. You can rearrange the order here if you'd like. Okay? of these middle terms. And I kind of think I'm going to. I would like to put the negative 2x with the 6 and then put the 9x with the negative 3. All right, now you don't have to do that. I'm just going to remind you that you can do that. Okay, and then we're going to group 2 and 2, leaving this plus in between. Take out the GCF of the first group, which will be a 2x, and that's going to leave us with a 3x minus 1. When we divide, or when we factor out a 2x from a negative 2x, that leaves a negative 1. It's a division, right? And then from this next group, we are factoring out a 3. And that's going to leave us 3x minus 1, which is a good thing because we want these to match, don't we? And they do. So you're going to factor out 3x minus 1 and leave 2x plus 3. So which one do you like best? All right, here comes the next. Okay, in this next problem, let's factor. Do you notice a GCF? Yep, there's a GCF this time around. We have a 2. So our first step is to factor out the 2, which leaves us 8x squared minus 18x plus 7. And now we have a trinomial. And I'm actually going to have you pause the video and you get to choose either the AC method or the bottoms up method. Or if you know another method that you've been taught before, go ahead and use it now. And then when you unpause, I'm going to show you my answer and you can compare. Okay, so pause your video now and try that trinomial. Okay, so I chose the bottoms up method and I needed two numbers that multiply to 56 that added to a negative 18. In the AC method, you would need that as well. I went ahead and made a table of all the different ways to divide 56 and I found the 4 with the 14. And of course, they both need to be negative because the sum is negative. And then I divided by A, which is 8, and reduced both fractions. And this time I got the two simple fractions at the end here, right? And then I went ahead and highlighted the denominators of those fractions because that's what's going to go bottoms up. Those are the ones that are going to go bottoms up with the x. So that's what I have here. If you see the 2x minus 1 for this negative a half, and the 4x minus 7 for that negative 7/4. And then your final answer should have your GCF in front. So don't forget that. Check now and see and make sure that you remembered it. And if you got that answer, then you're doing great. Okay, let's do a couple more. Okay, this trinomial has a GCF, doesn't it? I probably could have you do this one on your own. Matter of fact, let's have you finish this one. Pause now. Okay, this time around I went ahead and used the AC method. Multiplying A times C, I got negative 63 and a sum of negative 2. So my two numbers were negative 9 and positive 7. And I replaced the negative 2x with the negative 9x and the positive 7x, and then grouped. And so notice that I got for my final answer 5x, which was my GCF, times x minus 3 times 3x plus 7. You know those two binomials could go in either order. And so how did you do? Did you get the same answer? Whether you use the bottoms up or AC method? Okay, good. All right, next one. Okay, so our GCF here is this time around is negative. Do you notice that? Let's go ahead and factor out a negative 3x, and that's going to leave us with 2x squared plus 11x plus 5. Okay, so now I have one more method to show you here. With this trinomial, I'm going to show you the method called trial and error or guess and check. And this one can be a good method if your numbers are pretty small. And I'm looking at these numbers in this trinomial, and they're pretty small. The only thing about this method is that it's not methodical like the bottoms up and the AC method. So my students sometimes will just like very methodical methods where it's very clear cut what they have to do, and so they tend to prefer one over the other. But let me show you the trial and error method here. Basically, you're going to open a set of parentheses, your parentheses, and we're going to work with the numbers. And let's start with the 2x squared. And here's why this particular method might be a good one for these small numbers, because we're going to look for ways to factor 2x squared, and those are going to come here and here. And of course, with 2x squared, there's really only one way to factor that, right? 2x times x. So I'm going to put a 2x times x. Then I'm going to look for ways to factor the 5, and those go here and here. And I'm keeping in mind, as before, that it's a positive 5, and our middle term is also positive. So that's going to tell me that my signs here, these have to be positives, because we're multiplying to a positive and adding to positives. So I'm going to put the signs there. And I need ways to multiply to 5. And of course, you know that's 5 and 1. So then I'm going to guess where the 5 goes and the 1 goes. So I'm going to guess that the 5 goes here and the 1 goes here. But before saying that I'm done with this problem, I need to check my middle term. So that means that I'm going to have to check my outers when we FOIL, and the inners, or the inside. Those are the ones that give us the middle term. So 2x times 1 is 2x, and 5 times x is 5x. So notice how when I add these two, I get 7x, and I needed an 11. Do you see that? So that tells me that my 5 and my 1 are in the wrong spot. So I'm going to try this again. I'm going to go, I don't think that's right. All right, so I'm going to switch those. Going to put the 1 here and the 5 there. And then I'm going to check my middle term again. Okay, so now what do I get? So now I get 1x for the inside, and I get 10x for the outside, and that does give me 11x. So that tells me that I'm right, that this is my factor form. You see what we did? So the important part is that if you're going to use guess and check or trial and error, that you check to be sure that you are getting the right answer. Don't just put numbers without thinking, right? Okay, so for number A, which is our last one, I'm going to let you choose any of the 3 methods. So here's our last problem. I want you to pause the video, work this out, factor completely. You get to choose. Okay, first of all, which method did you choose? So I went ahead and went back to my bottoms up, and this is my answer. How does it compare to yours? The key to these problems, really and truly, you're not going to believe me, but it's the truth, is just to practice a bunch of them. Practice, practice, practice. Find a method you like or a couple of methods you like, and then just practice the heck out of them, and pretty soon you're a factoring pro. Okay, good luck.